get started. Welcome to session number 2 for SOLIDWORKS 2018 What's New. So, real quick, before we jump into today's content, let's talk about what we covered last time. So last Tuesday, we talked about tab and slot features, the What's New functionality for SOLIDWORKS 2018. We also talked about online licensing, the ability to sync your settings between all your licenses, uploading them to the cloud so that they're downloadable for your next instance. We talked about changes to mouse gestures, new open indicators, folder colors and assemblies, pack and go functionality, new option for select over geometry, new options in measure tool enhancements, the addition of SOLIDWORKS CAM to the SOLIDWORKS package. We also talked about 3D sketch improvements, the ability to reverse endpoint tangencies for arcs in a sketch, the ability to all caps for tables, new hole callouts for advanced holes, the ability to use 3D views and drawing insertion, and we talked about some smart lines. So that's what we covered last time. If you guys are interested, there is a recording of the last session that you guys can access. It should be on our portal, on our website there for you. You guys can watch all that content to keep up to date with everything that happened for SOLIDWORKS 2018. We do have one more webinar session after this one where we'll cover the finality of everything we don't talk about either last session or today. So keep in tune. All right, so let's get started for today's content. So we're going to be talking about a couple of additional changes for drawings that we didn't cover in the last section. So in this section, what I want to talk about is new options for broken out views and a new option for break views for sketches. So we'll go ahead and transfer into SOLIDWORKS now and take a peek at some of the latest enhancements for SOLIDWORKS 2018. All right, so the first one we're going to talk about is a new function for creating break views or breakout views inside of alternate position or detailed views. So how do we do this? Same way we always created breakout views. So I've already gone ahead here and we have a sketch predefined for us. We'll go ahead and use that for our breakout view. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tell it to break out the view and not to exclude any components. So we'll go ahead and just say, you know what, make sure that the breakout view is going to cut through everything here for us. And we'll go ahead and preview this so that way as we do this breakout view, we'll be able to see any changes that are occurring real time. Now, the cool part about this is as I change these depths and we look at the component in here, we'll actually be able to see a breakout view now in an alternate position view or in a detailed view. So you'll be able to use these in more places within your drawings to get your details across. An additional change to drawing is the ability to break view and disclude or include sketch blocks. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at this sketch here or this drawing here for us. Now, SOLIDWORKS did include in SOLIDWORKS 2018 the ability to control whether or not break views will actually break sketch blocks that have been overlaid over a model view. So what I mean by that is I do have a block with a bunch of text on it here for us that can be placed anywhere in the model. But if I place it over my break view, I can control whether the break view actually breaks with that text as well. Moving it will actually show us kind of a little bit in better detail what's actually happening here. So as it tries to transition across the break view for us, you'll see that it's actually splitting the text block to each side of that break view. So some pretty cool functionality there for us. Controlling it, just accessing that break view and checking the option for break sketch blocks. One more feature function for SOLIDWORKS drawings is a new ability to export bookmarks for drawings when saving as PDF. So what does that mean? If we jump over back to our SOLIDWORKS, you'll see inside of the settings options under export, if we control this thing, bring it down to the PDF functionality, there's a new checkbox all the way on the bottom for include bookmarks. What this allows us to do is if we save this model as a PDF, part of that option being checked, it is done in the system option, so it'll come through as part of the save export option. We'll create Bookmarks. So if you open this in Adobe Reader on the left-hand panel, you actually be able to click on the views and it'll take you to all the individual views inside of your drawing. So some pretty cool new functionality. The next thing we have here is performance evaluation. So this is something we touched on just a tad bit last time. So I'll go ahead and start this process here. If we take longer than 60 seconds to open a model, the software will see that that model is taking a significant amount of time to open up and will prompt us to run what's called a performance evaluation. So I'm going to cheat the system here. I'm going to force it to take longer than 60 seconds to open up. And while that's doing that here, let's go ahead and just jump back over here and talk about what this performance evaluation tool is going to show us. So once we start this performance evaluation tool, if it takes longer than 60 seconds to open up, we can actually open up the performance evaluation, and what it'll do is it'll talk to us about the details for the files. So how many files are getting opened, what versions they are, if any of those files were modified during the open process, so if they need to be saved, rebuilt, anything like that. Additionally, we'll talk about graphics triangles. It'll actually give us a real-time preview of how complex or how sophisticated the model is to open, and that's maybe one of the factors for what's taking so long. It'll also tell us about any problematic appearances in the assembly, and it'll talk to us about the open performance, displaying, rebuilding, different settings within our software that might be enabled that will slow down or speed up the opening process, and any relevant statistics. So hopefully that's about a minute or so here. So let's go ahead and finish opening this model. And what you'll see is that it opens up, and it opens up relatively quick. So I did elapse that minute time frame here just by not allowing the file to open up because of not hitting the checkout button there for us. So then it'll take about 14 more seconds to finish the open process for us. And then once it's opened, you'll see that it'll actually stay open. This tab will stay open and prompt me with a performance evaluation check. Now this model won't be, again, terribly complicated because it does typically only take about 14 seconds. But if we open this up, it will give us a real-time preview of everything that's happening inside this model. So if we look here, we do have some document detail open issues. So we can see, okay, some of the components are taking, half a second to open. As far as previous revisions, everything looks like it is SOLIDWORKS 2018 for this model, so we don't have to really worry about going through and saving as the latest version. However, there are some issues with the number of triangles in the model. We can see that there's 6 components in here, and they're totaling 83,000 triangles that the computer has to render in order to show this part. Additionally, we have a number of components that have the image quality set to either a medium high or a very high option. So again, an impacting on that performance. And the last thing we have here is we have 7 documents that have over 100 appearances applied to the faces. So it's just giving us more information about exactly what's going on, what's taking so long for the model to open up. Then as we scroll through, settings look good, no problems there. If you do have some settings or checkboxes that are turned on inside of your system options, that'll update for us. But in essence, it's just giving us a quick performance evaluation of everything that's going on inside of our model and why it may be taking so long for it to open up. So let's go ahead and step forward into the next part of this presentation. So for the next feature functionality I have for SOLIDWORKS 2018 to show you, we have patterning. So patterning is something that's been enhanced this year for SOLIDWORKS 2000 version 18. So I'll go ahead and open up this this model over here for us. Oops, wrong model. We'll do that one more time here. And we'll get an entire assembly in here. And what you'll see this year with SOLIDWORKS 2018 is we now have the ability of controlling not only the linear placement of components in a linear pattern, but we also have the ability of toggling what's called rotation. So we can actually insert a rotation on our linear instances. So instead of just getting a single static linear instance, one stacked on top of the other, we can control the rotation to add more and more components. Checking them will flow through to any local component pattern so that we can get everything to render real time, make everything look happy and copacetic. All right, let me go ahead and close all this, and then we'll jump into the next feature. So the next one's actually some pretty cool functionality we have for SOLIDWORKS 2018. We're going to be talking a little bit about mates. So while that's opening up, what we're going to talk about is some new functionality for hiding mates or hiding faces while mating. Additionally, we'll talk about a new option called misaligned mates for concentric mating. So the cool part about these misaligned mates is they allow you to define tolerances, and they also allow you or disallow you for the mate creation starting in SOLIDWORKS 2018. So first and foremost, what you'll see is there's a new function when inserting mates inside of SOLIDWORKS. If you push the Alt key while hovering over a face, it's very similar to what happened with the Select Other key when you right-click on a face. It'll actually force the face to disappear so that we can actually start to generate mated conditions. So we'll select a face here for the mating, and it'll allow us to select through the faces just by simply pushing the Alt key to hide those faces. So a relatively quick mating process. Again, that was done just by simply accessing the mate key and then alting anything that we're hovering over, and it'll force it to disappear. Now, some other new functionality that we see in SOLIDWORKS 2018 is the ability to do what's called a misaligned mate. So we'll go ahead and start by creating our first mate here. We have two concentric holes, a pin there plus a hole, and we'll go ahead and allow those things to be mated together. We'll allow them to be concentric with each other so everything's copacetic. Now on the second hole, if I tried to mate this hole, you'll notice that it's very slightly offset. This can be problematic when trying to go through our design process. So SOLIDWORKS 2018 introduced a new function that can be enabled or disabled from the settings options, where when trying to attempt to create this mate here, as a concentric mate, you'll notice that it actually prompts me and says, hey, this is not possible. We can either A, break the other mate to satisfy this one. We can add it so that there's two mates in series, and it'll just cause problems with the assembly. Or we can add this new option for create mate using misalignment options. So if we select this misalignment option, what it'll allow it to do is to actually create the mate for the two concentric holes, but it'll actually apply a maximum deviation or a maximum tolerance value between the two mates. So we can control this misalignment value, say maybe no more than 1 millimeter is allowed in order to create the mate. And then it'll actually allow the mate to go through without creating any problems within the assembly. So you'll see that all the assembly is copacetic, everything's happy, there's no red X's or yellow exclamation points anywhere, and we're good to move forward. So there is options for generating these things or turning off the ability to create them. You can access them in the document properties under mates for the tolerance values, as well as understanding if they're going to be symmetric for the misalignment or if the first or second one is actually going to be the one that's allowed to be completely misaligned. And additionally, inside of the system options under assemblies, you'll see that there's a new option for allow creation of misaligned mates. So by enabling this or disabling this, this will allow you then to generate those misalignment mates. All right, so for our next feature inside SOLIDWORKS 2018, we do have another enhancement to SOLIDWORKS sheet metal functionality for corner relief options. So in SOLIDWORKS 2018, what we're doing is we're introducing a new function for suitcase corner reliefs. So let's go ahead and open up a model here for you. And where we have a 3-bend corner relief, we can actually control now how these 3-bend corner reliefs are looking. So let's go ahead and access the sheet metal functionality here for us. And instead of digging through everything here for us, looking for that corner relief option, we could type it in the commands. But what we're going to do is grab the 3-bend corners, collect all the corners, and you'll see that there's a new option for suitcase. There are 3 separate options in the suitcase sheet metal functionality, the suitcase corner relief option. So the first option fills in that corner, makes everything look nice and pretty. The second option will add a gap into the suitcase, and we can define that distance of that gap there, that slot length. And the third and final option will allow you to backfill into the material itself. So you can see that it's actually going to preview filling back into the gap, the sheet metal gap. So again, new functionality for SOLIDWORKS 2018. It's called a suitcase corner relief. Access it by just going into the corner relief options, selecting the corner type, so 3 bend in this instance, collect all corners, and kick it over to suitcase. Alright, so now for our next function for SOLIDWORKS 2018, we have mesh bodies. So SOLIDWORKS did a lot of work this year in improving what we could do with mesh body file formats. So previously we had the ability of importing STL files that were overly large, just as simple graphics bodies, so they could be pushed into our model and we could look at them, but it was very difficult to actually model these things or to do anything with the surfaces. So this year SOLIDWORKS did a lot of work in there for mesh bodies. So let's take a peek at a quick one here for you. And this is a part I've already opened up, and I've imported the STL for us so that we do have the mesh body ready to go, just the graphics body. And what you'll see this year is not much has changed in the open process, right? It still looks like a mesh or like a graphics body. But what we can do is in the graphics body folder, if you right click, there's a new option for convert mesh bodies. Convert mesh bodies will actually create a SOLIDWORKS mesh body, something that's usable and creates this imported geometry for us. Now, the reason that this is so great for us is once it's been imported or once it's been converted over, there's some new functionality for dealing with these bodies or for getting out solid geometry out of this. So a new command that you'll see is create surface from mesh bodies. So we can actually do a create surface from mesh body. What will allow me to do is select a singular face and then calculate all the faces that fall within a certain tolerance value of that face. And so in this instance, I can generate a flat surface. If I go ahead and select that thing, you'll notice that it actually completed the operation. And if we hide that background body there, we now have a surface body that's been pushed in the exact same face with the holes in it and everything as our original surface body. So this will help us with reverse engineering that model if need be. So we'll go ahead and unhide this face here for us and continue talking about what else is new. So additionally, as part of this process, I can take sketches inside the SOLIDWORKS model and actually perform extrusions or to build geometry within the model here for us. And we'll go ahead and just select this inside component here. And we'll get just a nice large filled portion of the model here for us. And you'll notice with merge option doesn't work, so I'll go ahead and check that. So what it allows me to do is to generate this solid body over the top of my mesh body, and I can control this solid body the same way as I did the mesh body. So right-clicking on it, or that graphics body, and converting it over to a mesh body. This will allow these two bodies then to interact with each other, to perform different operations. So in this instance, if I wanted to do something like a Boolean subtraction, I can actually subtract the extruded body that we just created from the graphics body original, or the original graphics body. So if we go and hit our OK button here, you'll notice that there's now a nice hole inside of that graphics body. This is great because now we can use the different tools again for capturing surfaces, doing the reverse engineering process, or just sending it directly for the printing. Additionally, with the ability of capturing these different surfaces, we're able to export these things to use these things inside of assemblies, so we can actually use them for mating processes. So now that we have a nice flat face with concentric holes, we could use that inside of an assembly if need be. So just something new for SOLIDWORKS 2018 called mesh bodies. Accessing it again, just right-click on any of those folders or any of those solid bodies, and right-click on them, turn them into mesh bodies. Alright, so let's talk about what else is new in SOLIDWORKS 2018. So for SOLIDWORKS 2018, there was some improvements for SOLIDWORKS Interconnect. So this is something we introduced last year in SOLIDWORKS 2017 as a beta. About mid-year, it did go full release, so it was available to everyone without having to enable the beta option. But what they changed this year is the ability to import user-defined properties and also grab unabsorbed sketches out of the 3D CAD file formats. Additionally, we can grab the materials properties from there, and this also now works for STEP, ASCII, and IGES files. So what does all this mean? So let's go ahead and take a look back into SOLIDWORKS, and we'll look at the import options. So under the import options, we have Inventor, CATIA, Creo, NX, and Solid Edge. That is the file formats that the Interconnect tool functions with. There's some new options inside of here where we can grab unconsumed sketches and curves, meaning if there's a sketch that's driving some of the models inside of there, but it's not part of a feature, we can yank that thing through and actually display it inside of SOLIDWORKS. Additionally, we can grab any custom properties that have been defined inside that model, and we can grab material properties. So just some pretty cool new functionality. Now, improvements were also made to the Interconnect tool to allow us to use this for STEP, IGES, and ASCII files. So as part of the STEP, IGES, and ASCII file import now, if we actually open a STEP file, an ASCII file, or an IGES file, it will perform the same import options. So let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and generate one. So we're going to start with the model for the next demonstration, but we'll do this. We'll save this model as a STEP file. And now, inside of SOLIDWORKS 2018, if we open that STEP file, you'll notice that SOLIDWORKS no longer tries to convert it into a dumb solid. Instead, what it does is it builds a reference back to the original model. So in here now, instead of just seeing the dumb solid files, we're actually seeing a linkage back to the original STEP file. How this helps us is if any user was to export a STEP file over the top of that existing STEP file to give us an updated version, an updated revision, whatever the case may be, just a design change. SOLIDWORKS is now looking in that file actively to see any changes that have been made, and will re-represent those changes in here. So if somebody was to add another hole and save that STEP file again, next time we open this model, this assembly, we'd actually see the hole would appear inside this model. So just some pretty cool functionality to build those interconnections back to the original file sets. All right, so we'll go ahead and open this thing back up here. And for our next feature, we're going to talk about improvements to parts. So specifically in parts now, there's new functionality for generate bounding boxes, and there's been improvements to the defeature commands. So first and foremost, let's talk about a new feature for generating bounding boxes. So bounding boxes is something that you always had access to inside of sheet metal or inside of weldments. Now we can use bounding boxes inside of any component. So what you'll see is under the reference geometry option, there's actually a toggle now for generating a bounding box. If we generate the bounding box, and we'll go ahead and just hit my OK button, it'll generate a box around my 3D geometry. The properties from this bounding box can be found under the configuration-specific file properties. So if we come up here to the custom properties, we can look under the configuration-specific ones, and we can see the things like the length, the width, the thickness, or even the volume of the bounding box. Additionally, with the bounding box, we do have the ability of including hidden components. So in this instance, we've only grabbed what's shown, but we saw as part of the STEP export that there was a body that was living inside of this assembly. So for components that are not shown, we do have the ability of also including those as part of the bounding box. And once we've included those, it will update the bounding box preview as well as those properties in the configuration-specific property. All right, so the next feature that we're going to talk about as far as parts is concerned is some improvements to the defeature command. So defeature actually received some improvements this year to make things more readily apparent for what's actually going on during the defeature process. So in this process here, we'll go ahead and defeature this model. And as we walk through the defeature process, it'll give us ability to control which features precisely are being kept as part of the defeatured model And as we hit select or next, it'll show us a real-time preview of the features that are being kept versus which ones are being removed. So with those two holes, we just have the two holes being shown here. And the ability to specifically remove features. So if any faces, any holes, stuff like that that we select on this, we can actually just go ahead and get rid of. So let's get rid of that feature there. And as we preview it, it'll show us exactly what's going on. Now we'll go ahead and jump back just one more time, show you guys how to do that. Specific features I want to keep. I want to make sure I grab that hole and any relevant mounting holes for this assembly. It will update the preview to show me those relevant holes. Allow me to select components to be removed. So in this instance, if we want just this feature there, all of those things will it'll remove. And we jump down back to the defeatured model on the right-hand side. All right. Now for the next feature. So the next feature we have for SOLIDWORKS 2018 is some of you using SOLIDWORKS 2018 might have noticed that SOLIDWORKS functionality for Smart Dimension changed just a little bit. So what happened is in one of the previous releases, SOLIDWORKS made an improvement to the software to allow us to do pre-selection during Smart Dimension creation. So that was great, right? If I came in here, drew two lines that were at a slight angle, I could pre-select the two lines before selecting the Smart Dimension key. And what would that do? That would actually generate a dimension, an angular dimension between the two components. Now you'll see that that's actually been removed. If I try and use the Smart Dimension tool for that, pre-selections are no longer respected. The reason we did this is a number of instances we would pre-select a component before accessing the Smart Dimension tool and then try and dimension a second component and cause a lot of problems within the software. So instead this year, to perform the same interactions, the same behavior, pre-selecting models, if you select them and get the heads-up toolbar, you'll notice there's a new option called Auto Insert Dimension. Auto Insert Dimension works in a number of different pre-selections. So in this instance, I have two lines that are angular to each other. Auto inserting the dimension between them should generate an angle dimension. So we can measure the distance between the two components, or the angle between the two components. This can also be done for singular straight lines, auto dimensioning just the linear distance of that line, or doing two parallel lines. So there's a number of different pre-configured options. So let's go ahead and grab this component, make it parallel, pre-select between the two of them, and you now have the ability to auto-insert the dimension and just do the distance between the two parallel lines. Other places that this thing works is circles. Any circles or arcs, if you pre-select the circles or arcs, you'll be able to set the dimensions between them, doing the best fit. So in this instance, we'll do circle with the second circle. We'll go ahead and select both circles and do the auto insert dimension between them. And then in this instance, we're doing the center to center distance length between them. So again, just a new way of interacting, improving our functionality with our Smart Dimension so we're not accidentally having to hit escape all the time or re-access the tool, but then still giving us the ability to do the pre-selection functions. All right. Other new functionality that we saw this year is improvements for your specific templates or your specific file formats under the document properties dimensions to control the leading zeros. So previously you had the ability to create like smart, we'll go ahead and open up an older drawing, something that was created with an older template here for us. And this one should have. So anything that was created with the 2018 template won't have the smart function for leading zeros, but anyone using SOLIDWORKS 2017 or something that was generated in a little bit older version, you'll see that you can have trailing zeros set to smart or standard. In 2018, these have been removed. So if you update or modify your drawing template and change one of these options, they go away. They're not available anymore. So let's go and show you what I mean by that. So for dimensions, I have trailing zeros set to smart. It means the software is going to decide exactly how to behave. If I change this and set it to show, we will get prompted to tell us that there will be a change to this file format, and the smart option will no longer be available. So if I go and hit my OK button, it goes through, and you'll see that now the option for dimensions are only show or remove. And what this allows us to do is to actually control now tolerance and property values. So these are two new properties that were added for 2018. The ability to control the leading zeros for tolerances and the ability to control the leading zeros in the properties. So instead of setting it to smart, we now have specific finite control over the tolerance and property values. Same thing on the leading zeros for standard up here. If we change this to show, it does toggle that away so that standard, oh, maybe I'm mistaken here. I thought it was standard and smart. Maybe it's just smart. All right. And a couple more here for us. There was a new improvement for assembly level mirroring. So we'll go ahead and open up this assembly here for us. And you'll see that there's new options inside of the mirror functionality for controlling mirrored properties such as material or visual properties. So in this instance, I have a component here now for us. And we'll go ahead and create a mirror of this component. We'll define the mirror plane as being the flat plane here, and we'll define the component as being the component that we want to see. And as we step forward, we can create a handed version of this model. So we get a left-handed, right-handed. And then in the last option inside of mirror components, you'll see that there's actually an option now for transferring the material between the first and second component, as well as propagating the visual properties. So now as I select the OK button here and allow it to create the handed model in here, we'll actually get the visual properties will come over, as well as any material properties that were predefined inside of that model for us. So in this instance, that's ceramic porcelain. All right, so for SOLIDWORKS 2018, we've seen enhancements today for bounding boxes, the ability to create bounding boxes on singular components, the ability to do mirrored components inside of assemblies where we transfer the material and propagate the visual aspects from the original components. We saw some improvements to the performance evaluation tool, as well as new enhancements for drawings. So I apologize. I did finish a little bit early, about 10 minutes earlier than I was planning for today. Everything just went kind of smoothly. So we're going to go ahead and end the webinar early, but if you guys have questions, I will stick around for about 10, 15, 20 minutes or so. Use the interface on the right-hand side of your screen here for us. Ask those questions, and I'll be around to answer anything that's going on. We do have one more session for the SOLIDWORKS What's New 2018. Next week we will be covering things like PDM and some additional improvements to the SOLIDWORKS core functionality for 2018. So if you're interested in any PDM functionality, that will be next week.